Today we are diving into the OSI model, a key concept in networking that helps us understand how data moves from one device to another. We'll cover what it is, how encapsulation and decapsulation work, and break down each of its 7 layers. So let's get started. So what is OSI model? OSI stands for Open Systems Interconnection, and it's a framework that breaks down the process of network communication into 7 distinct layers. Think of it like a blueprint. It standardizes how devices like your phone, computer or router talk to each other, no matter who made them. Each layer has a specific job, and together they make sure that data gets from point A to point B smoothly. Now let's talk about 2 big ideas, encapsulation and decapsulation. These are 2 processes that happen as data travels through the OSI layers. When you send data, like email or video, it starts at the top layer and moves down the stack. At each layer the data gets wrapped with the extra information, like headers that help it reach its destination. This is called encapsulation. Imagine it like putting your message in an envelope, then adding more envelopes with instructions as it moves down. Once it reaches the destination, the process reverses. The receiving device unwraps the data, layer by layer, stripping off those headers to get to the original message. That's decapsulation. It is like opening all those envelopes in reverse order. And now let's break down the 7 layers of the OSI model from top to bottom and see what each one does. I'll also tie in how encapsulation and decapsulation fit in. Application layer. This is where it all begins. It's the layer you interact with, like your web browser or email application. It's responsible for providing services to the end user and turning your actions like sending a message into data. No encapsulation happens yet, this is just the raw data being created. Next up is the presentation layer. This layer translates data into a format the application can understand. It handles things like encryption, compression, or converting text to standard format. During encapsulation, it might add info about how the data is formatted or secured. The session layer manages connections between devices. It sets up, maintains, and ends sessions, like a phone call between 2 apps, for example. Encapsulation here might include details about the session, like keeping track of who is talking. Transport layer. Now we are at the transport layer. This one is a big deal. It ensures reliable data transfer, it breaks data into smaller chunks called segments, and adds information like port numbers to identify the app or applications it's going to. Think of TCP or UDP here. During the encapsulation it adds header with this info. On the receiving end, the encapsulation checks it to reassemble data. The network layer is all about routing. It figures out the best path for data travel across networks using IP addresses. During encapsulation, it wraps the data in packets with source and destination IP information. Decapsulation at this layer reads that to get the data to the right device. Data link layer. This one handles communication between devices on the same network, like your computer or router. It turns packets into frames and adds physical addressing like MAC addresses. Encapsulation adds a frame header and trailer, including error checking information. Decapsulation uses this to ensure that data is intact. And layer 1, or physical layer, finally the physical layer. This is the hardware level, everything to do with cables and signals. And it converts frames into electrical pulses, light, radio waves to send over the network. No headers are added here, it's just raw transmission. On the receiving side, the decapsulation starts by turning those signals back into frames. And for Comptia Network Plus exam, it is also important to understand what data types are being transferred at each layer. So let's break it down, starting from the bottom. Physical layer. At physical layer we are dealing with bits. These are raw ones and zeros transmitted as electrical signals, light pulses or radio waves over cables or wireless connections. So here you need to know that at physical layer data is being transferred in bits. Data link layer. Up at the data link layer, data is organized into frames. Frames include bits plus MAC addresses and error checking info moving between devices on the same network. And here the data is being transferred in frames. And moving on to the network layer works with packets. These are frames wrapped with IP addresses, allowing the data to travel across different networks. At the transport layer, data becomes segments if the data is being transferred by using TCP, or datagrams if data is being transferred by using UDP protocol. So on transport layer, the data can be transferred in two different forms. If the data is being transferred by using TCP protocol, then data is called segments. Or if data is being transferred by UDP protocols, then data is called datagrams. And segments add port numbers to direct data to the right application, ensuring reliable delivery. At session layer, the session layer handles data in more abstract sense. Still segments, but now tied to the session management, keeping communication organized between apps. And on layer 5 or session layer for the Comptia Network Plus exam, you need to know that this is data. The data transferred on this layer is known as simply data. Same applies for layer 6 and 7. At presentation layer, the presentation layer also deals with data, but it is formatted data, which is translated or encrypted into a form the application can use. And on application layer, finally, the application layer works also with data as you see it. Messages, files, web pages, ready for your apps like browsers or email clients. So on layers 5, 6 and 7, which are session layer, presentation layer and application layer, for Comptia Network Plus exam, you should know that there is being transferred data.